very warm welcome to all of you in this fourth lecture on hand layup and spray layup. We have been having a series of lectures on polymer matrix composites and the processing of polymer matrix composites. Till now we have taken 3 lectures on polymer matrix composites and the challenges in the processing of polymer matrix composites. In the first 3 lectures, our major summary or major focus was on the materials aspect, that is what are polymer matrix composites, what are the various constituents that go into the polymer matrix composites, and what are the challenges in the polymer matrix composites processing. Today we are going to start the major processing techniques for polymer matrix composites. Although there are a large variety of processes which have been used for processing, but we are going to focus on some specific and widely used processes for fabrication or processing of polymer matrix composites. In today's lecture, we will see how these processes have been broadly classified into various categories. We will see what are the constituents that go into the fabrication, that are what are the basic ingredients or the constituents that are combined together to make a composite material. And finally, we will see the basic process, the procedure, advantages, limitations and the applications of the 2 processes in picture today. The 2 processes in question today are the hand layup and the spray layup process. So, let us now start our discussion on the classification of the processes or the classification of the primary processes for polymer matrix composites. Now, processing of polymer matrix composites can be broadly classified into 2 categories, primary processing and secondary processing. On your screen you can have an idea. We have a primary processing techniques in which we use near net manufacturing. I am just going to explain what is near net manufacturing, and we have a secondary processing in which we do the machining and drilling. So, the composite product development is achieved in 2 stages. Now, let me take an example of this mouse. This mouse is a plastic material, it is not a composite, but this plastic has been made or it has been given or it has been molded into this particular shape. So, the process is the primary processing. It is a primary processing method of molding this particular mouse to give it a particular shape. But now suppose I have to put certain additional things in this, some cutting has to be done or some slots have to be cut. So, that cutting of slots in this particular molded shape is called the secondary processing, that is machining and drilling of holes in a particular product is secondary processing. Now, similarly, this is an example of a plastic material which has been molded to the near net manufacturing and later on it has been machined in order to fit some additional things or additional components into the product. So, giving the shape is near net manufacturing, subsequent machining and drilling of holes is secondary processing. So, similarly, in processing of polymer matrix composites also we have primary processing in which we mold or we give the desired shape to the composite material. In case of secondary processing, this particular molded product or molded component is drilled or a hole is made by the drilling process or some edge trimming is done or some finishing is done. All those processes fall under the secondary processing. So, in this series of lectures our focus is primarily on the primary processing aspects of polymer matrix composites. So, we will see what are the different primary processing methods for polymer matrix composites and how they are classified into different categories, and then our focus would be, as the title of the lecture goes, hand layup process and spray layup process, and then we would be focusing on these 2 aspects of or these 2 processes of fabricating or processing polymer matrix composites. So, I think just to summarize again this particular slide, the total composite product is made in 2 stages, the primary stage and the secondary stage. So, primary processing incorporates near net manufacturing, whatever shape we want to produce that is molded using any of the processes or the primary forming processes. And when this shape is got or near net manufacturing has been done for a particular shape, if we want to fix some extra things or we want to assemble this particular job or this particular part with another part to get the complete composite product, then we need to make certain holes or do some edge trimming to facilitate the assembly operations, and for that we go for the secondary processing. So, secondary processing is in terms of machining and drilling. So, first near net manufacturing and then secondary processing in terms of machining and drilling. Now, basic polymer matrix composite has two basic constituents, that is the matrix and the reinforcement. So, the matrix can be a thermoset matrix or it can be a thermoplastic matrix. So, why this classification is given here? Because the processes that we are going to discuss would depend, or their applicability would depend upon the type of the material they are going to process. So, if a thermoset is being used, there would be some processes which would give very good results, and for thermoplastic there would be another set of processes which would give better results as compared to the processes which are most suited for thermosets. Similarly, the reinforcements can be in different types. So, reinforcement can be in the form of carbon fiber, in the form of glass fiber, in the form of aramid fiber, in the form of Kevlar. Kevlar and aramid are one and the same thing. The technical name sometimes is Kevlar. So, it can aramid and Kevlar is one and the same thing. We can have carbon, glass or aramid fibers. So, we have a matrix, we have a reinforcement, these two things have to be clubbed together in order to make a composite material. So, the matrix material can be thermoset or thermoplastic. Within thermoset and thermoplastics, on your screen you can see there are number of further types of thermosets. For example, for thermosets we have phenolics, epoxies, polyesters. On the contrary, in case of thermoplastics we have nylon, we have cellulose acetate, we can have polypropylene, we can have polylactic acid, we can have polyether ether ketone. There are different types of polymers which fall under the category of thermoplastic. So, in matrix we have thermoset and thermoplastic. On the contrary, we have reinforcement which has to be clubbed together with the matrix in order to make a composite material. The broad differentiation between the thermoset and the thermoplastic we have already seen in the module on plastics, in which we have seen what are the important properties and characteristics of a thermoset, what are the important properties and characteristics of a thermoplastic, what is the basic structure of a thermoset and a basic structure of a thermoplastic, which has already been seen in the lecture on thermoplastics and thermosets, which has been covered in the module on plastics. So, here we have as plastics, we have a polymer, we have a fiber which we are combining together to make a composite material, and these are in the end on your screen you can see these are non-biodegradable polymer matrix composites. So, non-biodegradable means the matrices that we are using here or the matrix material that we are using here is non-biodegradable, and the reinforcement that we are using, that is a synthetic reinforcement in terms of carbon fiber or glass fiber or aramid fiber. So, synthetic reinforcement, synthetic polymers, so we get a non-biodegradable polymer matrix composite. So, these are the, you can say, materials that will go into the hand layer process or the spray layer process, or for that matter any other process which would be used for fabricating the polymer matrix composite. Now, this is just you can see a representation how the fibers usually look like in industry. This is a glass fiber, you can see the fiber, there are fibers in x direction. Suppose I call this direction as x direction, as this direction as y direction. So, we have fibers in x direction, we have fibers in y direction. Similarly, this is a Kevlar fiber, this is a graphite fiber, black in color. Carbon fiber would also look like same, and this is a Kevlar carbon hybrid. We have in one particular direction carbon fibers, all these black fibers are carbon fibers, and in the other direction perpendicular direction we have the Kevlar fibers. So, this is how the fiber mats would look like, or the woven fiber mats would look like. These days there is a trend towards biodegradable composites. So, the fibers not only can be synthetic in nature, these can be natural fibers. So, there are different types of fibers which are available from the plants also. So, this particular diagram or this particular classification gives us an idea that fibers not only can be got synthetically, there are natural fibers available which can be used and which are being used very widely in today's scenario in order to develop fully biodegradable composites. So, the plant fibers can come from grass, they can come from the leaf, the plant fibers can be got from wood, the plant fibers can come from stems and the seed and the fruit. And further, from grass we have different types of list of fibers on your screen. You can have bamboo fibers, you can have corn fiber, you can have elephant grass fiber. From the leaf, different types of fibers can come like sisal fiber, banana fiber, palm fiber. From wood also different types of fibers can come like softwood fiber, hardwood fiber. From the stems or the bast, we can have flax fibers, we can have Grevia optiva fiber, we can have hemp fiber, canaf fiber. And from the seed or the fruit also cotton fiber can be got, coconut fiber can be got. So, there is a huge variety of fibers which can be used for making a polymer matrix composite. So, in the previous slide we have seen that there is a family of the polymers which is broadly categorized into thermoset and thermoplastic, and within thermoset and thermoplastic there was a huge number of different types of thermosets and thermoplastics which can be used as the matrix material. When we talk about the reinforcement, there is a category or there is a big family of the fibers which can be used. We can have synthetic fibers which are carbon fiber, glass fiber, Kevlar fiber, or we can have natural fibers which is clear on your screen. Different types of fibers can be used, like the fibers can come from grass, they can come from leaf, they can come from stem, they can come from seed. So, within these there are different categories of fibers. So, we can have different types like coconut fiber, bamboo fiber, Grevia optiva, sisal fiber, nettle fiber. So, there are a large type of fibrous types which can go into the polymer matrix to make a polymer matrix composite. On the basis of the shape of the reinforcement also, we have different types of composites. So, composites based on reinforcement can broadly be classified into fibrous composites or particulate composites. So, as we have seen in a previous lecture that the reinforcement can be further classified on the basis of its shape. So, the fibers can go into the matrix in a continuous form. So, we can have continuous fibrous reinforcement, we can have randomly oriented fibers or short fibers, we can have whiskers, we can have particulates. So, the fibers can be in different shapes or different types: continuous, discontinuous, whiskers, particulates. So, on the basis of reinforcement, we can have fibrous composites in which the reinforcement is in the terms of fibers, or we can have particulate composites in which the reinforcement is in terms of the particles. Now, the particles can be either randomly oriented or the particles can be preferentially oriented. So, when we have the particles preferentially oriented, the properties would be different in the direction of the reinforcement than the properties in the transverse direction to the direction of reinforcement. Suppose we have all the particles oriented in one particular direction, the properties would be different and as compared to the transverse direction. So, particulate composites, it can be randomly oriented, they can be preferential oriented. Then within particle composite we can have filler composites, we can have flake composites. So, flakes can also be used as the reinforcement type. Within fibrous composites, we can have multi-layered composites, we can have single layered composites. In multi-layered composites, we can have laminate, we can have hybrid. Laminate and hybrid can further be classified as unidirectional, in which all the fibers are in one particular direction, or they can be bidirectional in which the fibers are in both the direction. So, the fibrous or woven mats we have seen in the previous slide, in which 4 different types of fibrous mats were shown: the glass fiber, the Kevlar fiber, the graphite fiber, and a hybrid between the graphite and the Kevlar fiber. So, when the fibers are in both the direction, we can call them as the woven composites, because the fibrous reinforcement is in both the direction, x and the y direction. Or we can have all the fibers in one particular direction, those are called unidirectional composites. Now, hybrid composites basically we have different types of reinforcement in the single composite. The reinforcement can be graphite fiber and carbon fiber, graphite fiber and Kevlar fiber. So when we have different types of reinforcement, we will be calling them as the hybrid laminates or the hybrid reinforced composites. Within single layered, we can have continuous fiber, we can have discontinuous fiber reinforcement. Within discontinuous fibrous reinforcement, we can have preferred orientation or we can have random orientation. So we can see on the basis of the type of reinforcement that we put into the polymeric matrix, we can get different types of composites. So we can have continuous fiber, we can have discontinuous fiber, we can have particulate fibers, we can have whiskers, we can have small fibers, we can have all the reinforcements in one direction, we can have randomly oriented reinforcement. So all these types of composites will have different properties. All the fibers in one direction, suppose the tensile strength in that particular direction would be very high, whereas the tensile strength transverse to the direction of fibers would be comparatively low, because the fibers are the main load bearing members, which we have already seen in our previous lectures. So when we are loading a particular composite which is having all the fibers in one particular direction and we are using long continuous fibers as the reinforcement in a polymer matrix, the load when applied in the direction of the fibers would be, the failure load would be very high. Suppose the same composite which is having long fibers in one particular direction, we are applying a tensile load in opposite to the direction of the fibers or perpendicular to the direction of fibers or in the transverse direction to the direction of fibers, the load bearing capacity of the composite would be considerably less. Why? Because the fibers now would not be taking much of the load, the failure would be induced by the failure of the matrix when the fibers are in x direction and I am applying the load in y direction and the tensile load is being applied in y direction. So we can see, depending upon the type of reinforcement, whether it is continuous or it is discontinuous, it is in the form of fibers or it is in the form of particles or it is in the form of whiskers, it is preferred in one direction or it is randomly oriented. So the way we are putting the reinforcement in the polymer matrix is going to affect the mechanical properties of the composite which we are going to develop, which is very clearly seen in this particular slide, where the composites have been classified on the basis of the reinforcement or the shape or the you can say type of the reinforcement that we are putting. So we can once again just summarize, we can have fibrous composite, we can have particulate composite. Within fibrous we can have multi-layered or single layered. Within single layered we can have continuous or discontinuous. In multi-layered we can have laminates or hybrids. In hybrids we can have one layer of glass fiber, then carbon, then glass, then carbon, or one Kevlar, graphite, Kevlar, graphite, Kevlar, graphite. So we can have different combinations or you can say different stacking sequence or lamination sequence in hybrid composites. So on your screen you can very easily see the reinforcement can be put into the polymer matrix in a number of ways. Now till now we have seen that a matrix has to be reinforced with fibers. The fibers can be of different materials, for example the carbon fiber, glass fiber, aramid fiber. We can have natural fibers also, for example Grevia optiva, sisal, nittel or bamboo or coconut fiber. So there can be different materials which can be used for making the fibers. Then on the basis of their shape or size, the fibers can further be classified. We can have long fibers, we can have small fibers, we can have fibers in one direction, we can have fibers in all the directions. The fibers can be randomly oriented, fibers can be aligned in one particular direction, and we have a polymer matrix. So now these fibrous reinforcement has to be clubbed with the polymer matrix to make a composite material. Now the processing of polymer matrix composite, there are different methods which are used to process the polymer matrix composite. Now these methods can further be classified into different categories. Now we can have open mold processes. On your screen you can have an idea, you can see a very clear cut distinction between the various types of processing techniques used for processing of polymer matrix composites. So processing of polymer matrix composites can be achieved by a open mold process, it can be achieved by a closed mold process, and it can be achieved by other processes. Within open mold process, we have hand layup technique, we have spray layup technique, tape layup and autoclave method. In this particular, classification or in these particular processes, the mold that will be used for making the polymer matrix composite would be a open mold. Open mold means it can have you can say interaction with the atmosphere. So, it would be a open mold. Whereas, in certain circumstances we will go for a closed mold process. In closed mold process we have different processes such as compression molding, injection molding and transfer molding. So, the mold is closed, it has two parts, the two parts will close together to form a cavity of the product which has to be produced inside, and the material would be injected or it would be placed inside the closed mold in order to convert the raw material. Now, what is the raw material in a polymer matrix composite? The raw material is the fibrous reinforcement and the polymer matrix. So, we have a polymer matrix, we have fibrous reinforcement, these are the raw materials. Now, these raw materials have to be converted into a composite product. In open mold process, the mold would be open type which can have a interaction with the atmosphere. In closed mold, two parts would be used and they would be clubbed together, a male part and a female part, they will join together. In between we will have a cavity, and in that cavity the raw material would be converted into the final product, and the final product would be a composite product, and more specifically a polymer matrix composite product. And there are few other processes which are used for fabricating or processing the polymer matrix composites, and these are the processes such as pultrusion and filament winding. So, this particular diagram gives a classification of the techniques which are used for processing of polymer matrix composite. These are not the only processes which are used. There is a wide variety of processes which have been developed over a period of time for processing of polymer matrix composites. So, during this series of particular module 5, we will see that which are the most important processes which are used for fabricating composite products. Which type of composite we are talking about? We are talking about the polymer matrix composite. So, further we can have the types of processes which are used for processing of polymer matrix composites. These are the processes: hand layup, spray layup, pultrusion, filament winding, resin transfer molding, compression molding, injection molding. So, these are few important processes which are used for processing of polymer matrix composites. So, we would be seeing each one of these process with the process diagram, the process procedure, the control variables, the advantages, the limitations and the application areas of these particular process. So, the focus would primarily be on the processes which are widely used for processing of polymer matrix composites. So, in today's lecture our focus would be on hand layup and spray layup. As on your screen you can see, the processing of PMCs can be broadly classified into open mold process, closed mold process and there are other processes. So, hand layup and spray layup process falls in the category of the open mold process. So, these two processes are open mold processes. Now, what are the process details? What are the constituents that go into these processes? That we are going to see in the subsequent slides. Now, the first and the foremost process and the most common process that is used for processing of polymer matrix composites is the hand layup process. So, hand layup method or the hand layup technique is the simplest method of composite processing. It is the most simple method and it can be the needs and the requirements are not that stringent. Even a very simple mold can be used for processing using the hand layup technique. The infrastructural requirements for this method is also minimal. So, we need to have a mold, we need to have the constituents, that is the fiber and the polymer, and we can use the mold to give a shape to the particular raw material. So, the raw material, as I have already discussed 2-3 times, the raw material is a fiber and a polymer. We have to somehow combine these two raw materials to get the final product. So, the infrastructure requirement is only in terms of the mold. So the mold can be a metallic mold, and there can be other materials, even wood can be used as a mold material in order to give shape to the polymer matrix composite. So the infrastructural requirements, so there are no big machines required for a hand layup process. It is a manual process, it is a labor intensive process, and the quality of the product would depend upon the skill of the molder as well as on the quality of the mold that we are using for fabricating the polymer matrix composite. So on your screen you can see that hand layup is the most simplest method of processing of composites. The infrastructural requirements are not too much, the infrastructural requirements are very minimal. The processing steps are quite simple and easy to understand. I can emphasize here that most of the research work that is being done in the field of polymer matrix composites, most of the researchers are using the simplest method of fabricating the composite materials, and hand layup is one of the processes which is widely used for making the composite materials, and more specifically the polymer matrix composite material. The production rate is less, it can be less to medium, and this particular process is quite suitable when the production volume required is minimum or to a medium level. For very high production rates, hand layup process is not suitable. So hand layup process is suitable for low to medium production volume. So just to summarize the broad, you can say, introduction of the hand layup process, it is the simplest method. We do not require very complicated and sophisticated machines for the hand layup process. It is a labor intensive manual process. The processing is very simple, the steps are very easy to understand, and the production volume for which the hand layup process is suitable is low to medium. For low to medium production volume, we can justify the use of a hand layup process. Now, as we have seen in the hand layup process, it is the simplest method, it is widely used, infrastructure requirements are minimal, and the processing steps are quite easy to understand. Now, what are the raw materials used in the hand layup process? We can see there is a matrix and a reinforcement which are clubbed together to make a composite material. I think I have referred this a number of times. So what are the matrix materials which are used or most widely used for hand layup process? These can be epoxy, polyester, polyvinyl ester, phenolic resin, polyurethane resin. So there are different types of matrix materials which can be used as the raw material in case of hand layup process. Also, what are the reinforcements that are used? The reinforcement can be in terms of glass fiber, it can be a carbon fiber, Kevlar fiber, aramid, natural plant fibers. Natural plant fibers, again we have already seen one particular slide in which we have seen there is a wide variety of plant fibers which are being used today in the fabrication of polymer matrix composite products. Now what are these? These can be plant fibers, can be in terms of sisal fiber, banana fiber, knittel, hemp, flax. These are some of the categories of the plant fibers or the natural fibers which are being used as the reinforcements to the polymer matrices. So we have a plastic material as a matrix, and all these types of fibers can be used as the reinforcement materials. So the raw material for the hand layup process are the plastics or the polymers in terms of epoxy, polyester or polyurethane resin, and the reinforcement is in terms of fiber. Fibers can be synthetic in nature or they can be natural in nature. So natural fibers are flax, hemp, as on your screen you can see sisal fiber, or synthetic fibers can be carbon, graphite and Kevlar. Now all these fibers are in the form of unidirectional mat, can be available in the form of unidirectional mat. They can be bidirectional or woven mats, or you can say these would be in the form of a cloth which would be used as a layer of a reinforcement. And then we can have mat of randomly oriented fibers also. So depending upon the requirement, we will choose the type of the reinforcement. Either we are going to use it in the cloth form, or we are going to use it in a randomly distributed form, or we are going to use it as a differentially oriented mat or randomly oriented fiber mat. So we can see we have different types of fibrous reinforcement, we have different types of matrices which can be clubbed together in the hand layup process to make a composite product. Now hand layup procedure, it is very simple. We will try to understand it with the help of a diagram also. So, just I will read it for you. We have a mold, it can be a flat plate mold as you can see on your screen. So, in order to make a polymer matrix composite product using a hand layup process, the first and the foremost requirement is a mold. So, the mold can be a flat plate mold. We have a diagram in our presentation that we will see that how a flat plate mold would look like. So, on your screen you can see that we have a flat plate mold like this. This is the bottom plate and we can have a top plate, and the layup would be done in between the two plates. Now, this is the top plate of the flat plate mold and this is the bottom plate of the flat plate mold. So, we have a bottom plate and we have a top plate. Now, how these two would be joined together? These two could be joined together with the help of nuts and bolts. So, the layup would be done in between these two plates. In order to have a very good surface finish, we can have slightly embossed portion on the two, and this particular portion can be ground or grinding operation can be done on these two plates in order to have a very good surface finish. So, the surface finish of these two surfaces should be very high. So, the surface finish has to be high. Why the surface finish has to be high? Because this surface finish would be duplicated onto the composite product that we are going to make, and here on these two plates the layup would be done. Alternate layers of the fibrous reinforcement and the polymer would be put on this particular plate. So, this plate would not be in use initially, only we will do on the bottom plate, and then finally once the layup is ready we will bring the top plate and we will place the top plate on top of the bottom plate in order to get a composite. So, the would be the construction or the structure of the composite that we will be getting here. The structure of the composite would be a layered structure. So, these lines represent the fibrous reinforcement. So, these layers are the fibrous reinforcement and we have alternate layers. Now, depending upon the types of layers we will have different layered composite. We can have 4 layers, we can have 6 layers, we can have 8 layers. So, different layers, and we will this total is called a laminated composite. So, what are the main constituents of this? The main constituents of this are the fibrous reinforcement and the polymer matrix. Now, how this is done? This is a simple flat plate mold which is used for making a composite material, and we are making a laminated composite, the different layers. If I have a side view of this particular composite, it should look something like this, in which I have all these are the ends of the fibers, and in between the portion that I am highlighting or the darkened portion is the matrix material. So, how many layers are there in this particular composite? There are 2 layers. This is layer number 1, this is layer number 2. So, we have layer 1 of the fibers, layer 2 of the fibers, and in between this particular portion is the matrix which is a polymer, any type of polymer. Examples we have already seen, and these are the fibers which are, or the bundle of fibers. So, this is one representation of a composite material. So, we have different layers, we can add other layers also. This particular view I am showing, we can add other layers. So, this particular composite now becomes a 4 layered polymer matrix composite. So, we have a 4 layered composite in which this darkened portion represents again the matrix or the bulk of the material, and this circular portion represents the edges of the fibers at the edge of the laminate. So, this is a simple way of making a composite material. I have shown that there are different plates, top plate and the bottom plate. This is a flat plate mold. Now, the shape of the composite that we will get will depend upon the shape of the mold. Now, this is a flat plate mold, we will get a composite laminate if we use this process of hand layup. If we have a particular shape, we will get a different shape of the composite depending upon the shape of the mold. So, on your screen now you can see the hand layup procedure. Now, we have a mold, as I have already explained, a flat plate mold. Suppose now a release gel is sprayed on the mold surface so that the polymer does not stick to the mold surface, or the plastic do not stick to the mold surface, and easily the final product can be extracted out or removed or demolded from the mold. So, a release gel is sprayed on the mold surface. Thin plastic sheets are also sometimes used on the top and the bottom plate of the mold so that the final product is easily removed. The polymer is used uniformly spread with the help of the brush. Now, the polymer or the plastic is available in different forms. So, the main important point is the viscosity, that is one of the important parameters. It should be viscous enough to be spread on the mold, and it should have a optimal viscosity. It should not flow and it should be controllable, and it should not be too, you can say, high a viscosity that we are not able to maneuver it on top of the mold. So, we should have a optimal viscosity of the polymer. Now, the polymer has to be applied on the mold with the help of a brush, but before applying there is another important step. A hardener or a catalyst has to be added to the polymer in order to accelerate the rate of polymerization or curing. In very simplistic terms, the process can be described as the hardening process, in which, because I have already told, the polymer will have some viscosity, it means it is in a semi solid state or in a liquid state, and from this semi solid or a liquid state it would be converted into a fully solid state. So, that means it would polymerize or it will cure, and in order to aid that process of conversion from a particular state to another state, that would be accelerated if we add a particular catalyst or a particular hardener with a resin or a polymer. So, this polymer would be added with another, you can say, hardener or a catalyst in order to accelerate the rate of polymerization or curing. So, we have a flat plate mold or any given shape of the mold. We will apply a release gel. We can place, we have optionally we can place thin plastic sheets, and then we will prepare the resin and the catalyst together. We will stir them properly, and we have the fibrous reinforcement, suppose in the form of a woven mat. So, we have the ingredients ready, we have the mold ready. Now, we will do the layup process. The first layer of the mat is placed on top of the fiber, on the top of the resin that we have already spread with the help of the brush. Second layer of mat is then placed on the polymer surface, and a roller is rolled over the surface to remove any air trapped as well as the excess polymer present. So, we have applied the polymer, we have put the fibrous mat on top of the polymer. Next is, after curing either at room temperature or at the some specific temperature, mold is opened and the developed composite part is taken out and further processed. So, the thickness of the composite product or the polymer matrix composite that we are trying to develop using the hand layup process would depend upon the number of layers that we are putting in the polymer. So, it is an alternate process, as I have explained with the help of the diagram. Suppose we are using a flat plate mold. First of all, release gel is separate, a thin plastic sheet is kept, and then with the help of the brush we are applying the polymer. we are putting the mat of the fiber on top of the polymer, again we are applying the polymer with the help of the brush, again we are putting another mat of the fibrous reinforcement, again we are applying with the help of a brush the polymer, and again we are applying the fibrous mat. So we may have 4 layers of fibrous mat, we may have 8 layers of fibrous mat, we may have even have 16 layers of mat or the woven mat or the cloth of the fiber, and then finally the top part of the mold is placed on the bottom part of the mold. It is tightened, a pressure is applied, even we can apply pressure with the help of a hydraulic press. A pressure is applied, the excess resin is removed, and finally it is left for curing. The curing can also be done at an elevated temperature, but mostly in hand layer process curing is done at the room temperature. And finally the top part of the mold is removed and we get the composite material. And if it is a flat plate mold, we will get a composite laminate which would be in the form of a you can say a sheet. In case of a different shape of the mold, we will get a different type of a composite material. On your screen you can see a very simple representation of the hand layer process. This is the open mold, yellow colored. Then there is a release gel next to the mold which is applied in order to facilitate the easy removal of the composite material. Then there is a layer of the reinforcement which has been put on top of the release gel. Then the polymer resin is sprayed. This is the, you can say, container of the resin. The resin is sprayed on top of the fibrous reinforcement and we get a composite laminate. The roller is used as a consolidation process to apply pressure in order to remove the excess resin from the composite product, and finally we will get the composite in this particular shape, that is the shape of the mold. In the example I have taken in the prior slides, I have already told with the help of a diagram we can use a flat plate mold also. So the 3 or 4 important steps are the incorporation or the putting up of the release gel, the putting up of a thin plastic sheet in order to facilitate the easy removal of the composite product, and then we can even apply certain gel coats also if possible, if required, depending upon the surface finish required, and then we will put the alternate layers of resin and reinforcement, and finally we will get the composite product. Now this is one diagram of a simple flat plate mold. This you can see, this is the, you can say, holes for fixing up the two parts, and we have this raised portion which can be given a very good surface finish with the grinding process, and the layup or the hand layer process would be carried out on this particular surface and a very good surface finish can be got. So this is that raised portion here, 200 millimeter by 200 millimeter. The layup would be done here in the form of alternate layers of resin and the reinforcement. The reinforcement, as we have taken example in today's class, the reinforcement is in the mat form or the cloth form, in which it is a continuous reinforcement. Fibers are in both x direction and the y direction. Now what are the advantages of the hand layer process? Continuous fibers and mats can be suitably used, widely used composite processing technique, and the tooling costs are very low. The steps are comparatively easy and easy to understand, and the control can be exercised properly in case of a hand layup process. Excess resin anyway we are removing with the help of a consolidation roller. So in a hand layer process there are basically 4 steps only. We have a mold. On that mold we are spraying the release gel. After the release gel has been sprayed, optionally we can put a thin plastic sheet, and on top of that we will, with the help of a brush, we will apply this resin. After the resin has been applied, we will put the fibrous sheet. On top of the sheet again we will apply the resin, and depending upon the thickness of the laminate required, we will put alternate layers of the fiber mats after applying the resin. And finally a pressure would be applied with the help of a top plate of the mold, and after room temperature curing we will get a composite laminate. So the process is fairly simple. The disadvantages are the method is mainly suitable for thermosetting polymers, not very suitable for thermoplastics. The resin must have low viscosity, and then there are health and safety considerations also involved, because we are doing the things manually, we are touching the fiber with our own hands. Suppose we are using glass fiber, it is abrasive in nature, though it may have some health hazards. Glass fiber is also sometimes carcinogenic in nature, again there are few issues involved there. So, the resin and the catalyst, when they are reacting, there may be few fumes, or there may be some gases which may be generated, which may not be too good for our health. So, there are some health and safety considerations. So, these are some of the disadvantages, and also another disadvantage can be in terms of the limitations on the thickness if we are using a flat plate mold. Suppose we want to make a very thick laminate, the pressure that we applied would be very high on the top and the bottom layers, but in between the pressure may not be uniform. So, there can be some disadvantages associated with the hand layup process, but otherwise it is a very simple and a very easy process of making a polymer matrix composite. Now, the applications of hand layup process are aircraft. In some aircraft components it can be used, automotive parts can be made by the hand layup process. Boat hulls is one of the most historical applications of the hand layup process. Dashboards and decks can also be made by the hand layup process. So, this is one of the most easily and widely used process of making the composite parts. Now, coming on to the spray layup process, which is fairly similar to the hand layup process, but there are few distinct differences between the hand layup process and the spray layup process. Here again we have to combine the fiber and the matrix, or the fiber and the polymer together in order to make a composite product. So, spray layup process, it is again, as we have already seen, it is an open mold process. It is a further extension of the hand layup method. Processing is similar to hand layup process, the only difference lies in the application of resin and fiber to the mold. So, in case of hand layup process, we are putting alternate layers of resin and fiber on the mold. In this particular case of spray layup, we would be using a different method of putting these fibers and resin onto the mold surface. The process is well suitable for small to medium volume production, and the process is cost effective for producing small and large parts. The raw materials used in spray layup method are again same: epoxy, polyester, polyurethane resin. The reinforcements can be again glass fiber, carbon fiber, Kevlar fiber, natural fibers, hemp or natural fibers in terms of hemp, flax, coir, cotton, etc. All these fibers are in the form of chopped short fibers, flakes or particles or fillers. The spray layup procedure, how it is done? The spray release gel is applied onto the mold surface to facilitate the easy removal of the component from the mold. It is same as in the case of the hand layup process. Thin plastic sheets are used at mold surfaces to get good surface finish. A spray gun is used to spray the pressurized resin, catalyst and reinforcement in the form of chopped fibers. So, this is the difference between the hand layup process and the spray layup. In this particular process, we are spraying the catalyst, the resin and the chopped fibers onto the mold surface. A chopper gun or a spray gun is used in this particular case. A roller is used or rolled over the sprayed material to remove the trapped air bubbles or trapped you can say or excess resin. Curing of the product is done either at the room temperature or it can be done at the elevated temperatures also. After curing, mold is opened and the developed composite part is taken out and further processed. Maybe for secondary processing we may be required to make holes in that product, so that would be further processed. Now, this is a simple diagram of the spray layup process. On your screen you can see the same type of mold as we have used for the hand layup process we are using. Again we are applying the release gel to facilitate the easy removal, a polymer resin and a reinforcement. This is the green portion represents the sprayed material, and this is the most important part of the spray layup process, which is called the spray gun or the chopper gun. So, we have the fiber roving, the fiber is coming from here in this direction, it is getting chopped in this spray gun, and this is the supply of the resin. In between we can have a different tube for the catalyst also. So, we have a resin and the catalyst coming from this tube. we have the fiber coming from the roving, and the fiber and the resin are getting mixed, and sorry, the catalyst can come from this hopper also. So we have a catalyst, we can have another tube in this only in order to bring about the catalyst in the chopper gun. So we have a chopper gun, a catalyst is coming, a resin is coming, the fiber is coming, all these three ingredients are getting mixed in the chopper gun, and then finally we are spraying the chopped fiber onto the surface of the mold. The thickness will depend upon the number of times we spray this particular mixture on the mold. So it is sometimes difficult to control the thickness of the composite part being made by the spray layup process, which may be one of the limitations, but it is a very good process when we want to make a composite material in which the fibers are randomly oriented. So we further need to study the advantages, limitations and the applications of the spray layup process, which we will take in the subsequent lecture. So in order to summarize what we have covered today, we have basically seen three important parts in today's lecture. The first important part focused on the constituents that go into the fabrication of the polymer matrix composites, the matrix and the reinforcement, different types of polymers and the different types of fibers which are used for fabricating the polymer matrix composite materials. We have seen the hand layup process and we have seen the basics of the spray layup process. In today's lecture, we have also seen the classification of the polymer matrix composite processing techniques, which can be classified into an open mold process, a closed mold process and the other processes in terms of pultrusion and filament winding. So in the next lecture, we would focus our attention on the advantages, limitations and the application areas of the spray layup process, and we will carry forward the discussion on the pultrusion process, which is one of the automated processes for making the polymer matrix composites. Thank you.